Welcome to Doc's Lab and our third Master Series. Welcome to Doc's Lab and our third Master Series. I do believe this is the fourth video in our third Master Series. And in this video, we want to talk a little bit about feelings and emotions. In the first video after the intro, we really talked about immersive listening and becoming a connoisseur so that you can intuitively feel and relate to a good production and good quality without ever even seeing a piece of music. And then we really got into, looking at you becoming an engineer and a builder of productions without ever talking about any of the tools that we're going to talk about in the next video. So don't get scared, because we're going to talk about tools in the next video that to bridge that gap. Sometimes that people will see that the theory and the written music and, being the engineer and building it, and, that it gets a little dry, and the feelings and emotions bridge that gap. You get on Wikipedia and, Google feelings and Google emotions, and follow the links and really study about it, because, they have, when you get on even your social media, that they make emojis for any kind of feeling, emotion you can possibly think of, or they try to. Does that make sense? So people can try to, voice all these feelings and emotions that they're having. Because, the concept is, it's kind of funny, but a lot of times that I've come to understanding that, I watched this video one time of Hans Zimmer, and he was talking about doing this production for this movie score. And he was talking about this feeling being dodgy. And I was like, dodgy? What is that? But he was really in touch with that feeling and was really trying to make the music feel that way. Does that make sense? So not only was he relying on his theory and his musical abilities and his abilities to use his instrument, but he was also relying on really light variations and shades of different emotions. They have like emotion wheels, that there are tons of different shades of basic feelings and emotions that that you can work from, that to try to express, to try to, so that you can get more in touch with your feelings and emotions, so that you're able to invoke them more, so you're able to explore them more in the musical arena as with art. Does that make sense? To bridge that gap between the theory and the music and your instrument, those feelings and emotions, to try to combine them together to come out with the best piece of work possible, because it can very much dictate what you're doing and your performances, because little teeny nuances, little variations of how you use your voice, little articulations, change in texture, and how you do all kinds of different things, timing differences that aren't quite exactly in time, that add little feelings and emotions. And sometimes that the listener might not exactly feel, but you do. And the better you're in touch with it, the better they will enjoy your music, because they can feel that there's been feelings and emotions put in, rather than bum 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 bum, that there was bum 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 bum. Or you get into really super good virtuoso musicians, la 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 ba 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 ba, and they're feeling all over inside of them different variations and shades of emotions, trying to really just express themselves and explore themselves. But this is besides any of the tools that we're getting into to help us construct these things. Just getting in touch with them is going to make you improve you 100%, because then you'll be way more in touch with what's going on, and you'll have a much better idea when working with producers as an engineer that I'm really trying to get this feeling, and I'm trying to get that, and that's what when I put the production together, that's what I'm feeling. And you can help them as an engineer with compressors, equalization, spatialization, all kinds of tools, arrangement, help them change things to help them get there. Does that make sense? And the better you understand that, the better it's going to help you on both sides of the wall that we talked about, being the production engineer and the audio engineer, which are two different sides. Does that make sense? A lot of times, right? So we're trying to become that production engineer. So the next monumental thing you really need to think about and study and explore is feelings and emotions and all the little nuances and shades and things that are happening there. Because with articulations and little nuances you can do in music or things you can do with your instrument can really help you, and it helps improve you as a composer, as a performer, as a producer, and an engineer, because you're not just relying on these basic things in theory and the basic things your instrument can do. You're exploring different ways to try to voice these feelings and emotions that you're really in touch with, that you're trying to voice, that might be happening in the words of the song, or during the lead moment you're trying to do a piano lead or a guitar lead or whatever, or breaks that are trying to help emphasize things or add little nuances and textures, or the vocalist you're trying to add a little bit of to it, or anything. It goes on and on and on and on and on. But without you really being in touch with that, it makes it very difficult. So you being able to write these great compositions and produce, engineer, and build these great things, without you really being in touch with that you get a little dry and sterile. And so, making it a study unto itself for you to really explore that, dig into it a little bit so you can understand. You can keep things, like this wheel of emotions off to the side somewhere, like you do with some music theory things or something. That's like, no, I want it to be a little bit more, what's the feeling I'm looking for? I'm looking for this right here. What is it? It's kind of happy, but not exactly. It's kind of, and there's tons of them, to try to help you. And the more you get into that, you can research it on people that are doing like movie scores, that are trying to really evoke feelings, emotions, and things that are happening, and really explore that, because it will make you a much better producer. Have an intuitive feeling inside of you, just the feeling itself. Like we talked about becoming a connoisseur and a builder, just not without ever talking about the music theory or the instrument or anything. Just inside of you and your mind, it's saturated with that, and you've explored it so that you're really in touch with that, so that when you start feeling around on your keyboard, or you start looking around in your theory or articulations or different things, combinations, harmonies, whatever, that you're looking for this certain type of feeling. You're really in touch with your feelings and emotions to try to get there. So it really bridges the gap between those two different sides so they can help come together, and you're much better at doing it. Does that make sense? And I'm not going to make a real long video on this, but it's the next big, huge, monumental thing you really need to think about, because without you really understanding that, and being in touch with your feelings and emotions, be able to invoke them, being able to explore them, be able to understand all the different shades and nuances and little characteristics of different feelings and emotions, it's hard for you to voice that. And when you're searching around, the more you're in touch with this, the more artful and that your compositions and your productions will become, because they'll have much more feelings and emotions, because you'll have a much broader palette to work from. Just like a painter's palette has tons, starts out with basic primary colors, and then there's variations of it, that go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And the better they understand that, the bigger palette they have to work with, to draw from, for when they're building and when they're engineering and when they're composing and when they're trying to be artistic and when their artistic juices get flowing, what they have to draw on to get that painting done the way they want it. Does that make sense? Which is a little bit different sometimes, but you understand the concept, and it is huge. If you don't think it's huge, you're not going to become that major, wonderful producer. Does that make sense? And you really need to explore that, because, to do it for yourself when you're trying to get from one place to another and you're not quite there and the theory isn't taking you there and you trying to construct it and go in there and you're relying on your connoisseur abilities and your critical expert abilities about what things really work and don't, just from dry listening without the theory. They're just the feeling. Where is it going? It's going from that F sharp right to what? I can't find it. Oh, that augmented chord. The timing's off just a little bit with a little bit of a slur there, and a little bit of rise and dynamics. Oh yeah, that's it, bro, right there. Oh yeah, dude. And you're drawing on some feeling that's a little dodgy or a little cheeky or a little depressing or a little bit sad or some color of sad. And the more you explore that, the better you are going to be as an artist and a producer to help get that done, to help you work through your productions as you go one step at a time, building your productions like we talked in the last video, being that engineer and that builder. This helps bridge that gap. In the next video, we're going to talk about tools. So don't get scared, because we're going to talk about learning an instrument. We're going to talk about a little bit of basic music theory, and we're going to talk a little bit about rhythm music, because they're huge tools, and we're going to talk about some other tools also. And don't worry, it will be painless. Well, not completely painless, but for the most part. I mean, you don't get nowhere if you don't put in a little bit of work. But I'm going to try to keep it so simple that you just go, oh, wow, really? That? I mean, it's, because it can get complicated. Trust me, just like anything else. Things can get really super complicated, but if you break it down to the basics and work off of that your brain can relate to it much better as an artistic thing. And when you're engineering it and constructing it, that all the little nuances and embellishments and all these things make much more sense, rather than, and then the E sharp goes to the flat ninth, and then you have to go to the fifth to the minor third, otherwise it just doesn't work and you can't do that. It's theoretically incorrect. It's like, no, bro, it's not. It feels great and it sounds wonderful. Get off my back. Because it's true. Most theory was built on people doing what I'm trying to help you do, and then they're trying to write it out to where there was some kind of theoretical construct to help others that were trying to do the same, that weren't on the same level. Does that make sense? We're not, Bach and Beethoven or whatever. Does that make sense? So really take this to heart, really think about it, and sit down and start exploring it. And, sit down and keep yourself a few wheels of feelings and emotions to help you when you're working. What are you looking for? What can you possibly do there? Da, 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 da. And the more you do that, just like saturating yourself, like we talked about in the video before the last one, that the more it will become second nature. And the more you will feel these feelings and emotions, are better able to invoke them and explore them and move around in them. And the theory and your musical abilities on your instrument are much more attuned to being more artistic, invoking these feelings and emotions that most producers hope for, so that their power productions that are engineered and produced and constructed and built really well have these feelings and emotions that move the listeners to, oh yeah, dude, oh, that sounds so cool. And it makes me just want to cry or scream or happy or sad or vicious. I don't know. Does that make sense? So, I mean, you really have to take that into consideration, or light shades of it. A lot of classical music and stuff, that opera stuff that just invokes just light shades sometimes, they're just, and movie scores, that you're just feeling, and then Bobby's dog, and then it's just light kind of off shade sadness, but not really, and kind of strange and weird, and it's like, Night Before Elm Street kind of weird stuff, but, does that make sense? And it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. The more that you saturate yourself and the more you immerse yourself in that and explore those things, the more that you will become attuned to those things. And different types of music that are invoking those things, and movie scores that are going through different emotions and feelings as it goes through the movie, the more you saturate yourself with that kind of stuff, the more it becomes second nature to you, and you will move around in your productions and they will come out much better, because it bridges that gap so that your stuff isn't sterile and dry, and you understand how they go together much better, because they have to go together at some point. But your feelings and your emotions will dictate where you're going a lot of times. But sometimes not. Sometimes you're just like, no, I really need to go fall back on my theory and go, or I've got to be in key, or I got to go out of key or something there, and then more than a feeling and emotion. And that can be true also. So you got to watch out for that, because it is very true. So I really hope you enjoyed this fourth video in our third master series, and I certainly hope you start exploring this and you know, saturating yourself in immersing yourself in some productions that are doing that and help moving you around in that and really thinking about that and thinking about immersing yourself in that, and even like movie scores, immersing yourself in that and feeling what's going on there and what are they doing there to help get that emotion feeling and that little, you know, light shade of angry or sad or happy, or you know, what's happening there, you know, what's that feel like, you know, to let it just saturate you, the much better producer you're going to become. So I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video, and I will see you in the next one.